This is a GK Media podcast.
This podcast is part of the GK Media Studios Creators Network, helping people tell their stories. Become a storyteller today and learn about our podcaster network at gkmediastudios.com.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Wellth Talks, and we are delighted to have back again the amazing, the legendary George Kinder. And hopefully you did what we asked at the end of last week's episode. You shared it with someone. Those three powerful questions, as I said, are life-changing, and you don't know what's going on in someone's life. Sharing last week's episode can just have such a massive positive impact on their life and their path forward in their journey of what they want to do, and kind of get a bit more clarity and discovery on who they really are and what their life purpose is. And if you didn't hear last week's episode, well, if that's not meaning enough, to go back and have a listen to it. But George has been so kind, because he is, to put it mildly, a very, very busy individual. So he's been so kind to join us again for another episode this week on Wellth Talks. And last week, George, we were speaking about your book, The Three Domains of Freedom. There's three elements. Each moment is yours. Your life is yours, and civilization is yours. We kind of covered the second domain quite a bit with your life is yours. And when I say quite a bit, we could still happily spend 48 hours alone talking to you. But we'd be, as my mother would say, you'd be fopped if you do that now to the poor man. So can we just refocus back on the first one as well? Because when you said that to me in last week's episode, like, it was nearly like a shiver down the spine. I never heard it said in the tone and the manner that you said it. Each moment is yours. It's 4 words, but so powerful. So can you talk deeper to us on that?
Yeah, and I'm glad it touched you that way, because it should. I mean, we throw away our moments. We're racing after things. We're racing after money. We're taking care of demands in our businesses or in our family life. And in fact, we've got these amazing things. What else do we have? There's a trick question I ask sometimes when I have a big audience, because it's really quite something to see everybody raise their hand. I let them know it's a trick question. But the question is, have you ever experienced a moment of freedom in the past? Something you like, walking the beach, making love, doing something wildly creative, designing something new for your business, playing with your kids. If you ever experienced a moment of freedom in the past, I get everybody to raise their hand, right? And then I tell them, you all got it wrong. None of us have ever experienced freedom or anything else in the past. The only experience we've ever had has always been in the present moment. And that's an extraordinary thing. And it's kind of a childlike. The children know this, but we don't. We pay attention to the past and the future. Our only experiences are in the present moment. So why would we not want, like in university or through our culture, why would we not want to give some emphasis to mastery of the present moment? And we can. I mean, there is a practice, it's called mindfulness, that actually aims right at the present moment and to get you more and more sharp, more and more present, more and more there. And the other connection, I should just to connect to last week's talk together, this notion that listening is 100 million times as fast as thinking. I mean, that's really saying how much is happening in individual moments. Huge amount is happening. How can we access that? Why aren't we? Why don't we pay attention to it? So that's my main pitch, and mindfulness is probably the main technique to be used to strengthen that. Yeah.
That's funny. And for anyone who's watching the video, as you were saying that, the sun started coming in through the skylight above you, almost creating a halo around you. It's like you mastered the universe to work.
And the ironic thing is, and you're not going to believe this, but Gary knows my passion for the time now is exactly 11:11. I mean, you talk about the law of attraction. I mean, it's phenomenal. And the feedback, George, we got from last week's episode was sensational. It really, really was. I mean, I've had a couple of conversations with people, some of whom knew of your work and others that didn't. And I mean, it really just I don't know, is the word grounded? We often talk in our business, what's your one word for the week or the month, whether it's presence or gratitude or focus or, Gary, I think you said there during the week, belief was one of yours. But I mean, you talk a lot, George, around the importance of health. So it's one of the 4 pillars in Wellth Talks around health, wealth, business and family. And it's a cliche, and we've talked about it lots of times this year, or last year rather, we're in the middle of January. A healthy man is 1,000 wishes, a sick man is one. And, with your rituals there, whether it's early mornings or a little bit of meditating or walking or, WIN, what's important now? We were talking about a book there last week we read, From Good to Great, but can you maybe share, George, with our listeners, the insights you have? I mean, 77, looking 37. I suppose your top 3 insights for our listeners.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question, and something that you might not know. I share it occasionally, but I got one of the earliest cases of COVID, and I got a terrible case of COVID. And my COVID, I got long COVID. I got a COVID that just lasted and lasted and lasted. So my energy went way, way down. And my guess is that I still have long COVID, and I could give you little evidences of it. But you see the energy that I've got. So where does that energy come from? And that comes from paying attention, as you're talking about, to here I was laid out flat, basically, because mainly what I had was profound exhaustion and what they call post-exertional malaise. So I wasn't able to really do the things that I love to do. So what I learned from that, one of them was to go back to what we talked about last time, which is like, keep your eyes on the prize. What is your main purpose in life? And what is it that brings you alive from that standpoint? And so I would go there. And to me, what brought me alive was actually going out in a cabin that I have on my property in Massachusetts. And it's a peninsula that goes out into a lake. So I got to spend time in nature. And what nature does is it brings you alive. I mean, because when you walk out of the studio, right? Here you are, you walk out of the studio, suddenly there's the wind, there's the air, you smell aromas, right? Right. I mean, it's amazing what it does. It brings you alive. And so I would pay attention. I keep my eyes on the prize. That would be one of the prizes. The other thing is this notion that each moment is yours. And I really practiced mindfulness a great deal, because fine-tuning into being able to see into moments, I could see where I was sabotaging myself with the illness. I mean, not that the illness wasn't there, but there's a lot of curative powers that we've got by addressing our own anxieties, our worries, our kind of our lack of focus. So for me, it's mostly been mental practice, as well as keeping the body in as good shape and having a pretty good diet.
Yeah,
those are really important.
It makes such a difference, and some of the conversations we're having with clients when we're talking around life planning is, you look at statistics at the moment. There's 1 in 5 what we call wealth managers being fired by their clients, because it's all about their portfolio, it's all about their pension, it's all about their net worth. There is a correlation, this high stress and high cortisol, and then you have all of that health feeding into it, and sleep and so forth. But I mean, it's transformative. You look at the industry that, financial planning. The one word I won't say despise is advisor. I much prefer what you talk about as planning. We're planners. It is a noble profession. It's very much around being, if you like, clients' strategic thinking partner. Being their behavioural coach. It's 90% purpose, and then the plan is maybe 10%, and the portfolio then are only ever the tools in the bag. So I think, George, come back to what you shared with us there on our last episode, and it was just so enlightening to, the 3 questions. I haven't seen Gary, and it's not often I see him speechless in the studio, and I was just from a distance. You were just stuck to the chair. And people don't just retire, they think that when they get to 65, it's this magical finish line. Gary, you were saying that before we come on air here today. This thing around everyone is kind of focused on 60 and 65, and what happens then? They don't think, it's not all of a sudden, they go from having this identity where they're in a job, where they might have a title and a good income and the kids, and all of a sudden the loans are cleared. The house that might have had 4 or 5 or 6 becomes 2. and, their identity changes. And
Yeah.
it's much more around, it moves nearly from the why to the how. How are we going to live? Every day is a Saturday and a Sunday, and you're looking into the fridge at 10 to 12 on a Tuesday for the 16th time.
Yeah.
So it goes back to your purpose, doesn't it, George?
Absolutely. I mean, one more thing to share about that time when I was really down with the long COVID. I woke up one day, with it, and I thought, I went to my third question, and there were a bunch of books that I wanted to write. And these were books more in the artistic realm. They're books of poetry, they're books of photography, they're books about what is the nature of the present moment? What is it to be alive in nature? So these are different things from what you normally talk about here, but they were passionate for me. And there I was, 73 years old or something. And I thought, what if I never finish these books? And I'll tell you, Niall, there I was, flat out. I had 5 books I wanted to do. I finished all 5 of them in 2 years. I just went at it, even though I was kind of wiped out. And it's because of the passion. And this is what life planning does, is it enlivens your passion. You go at what is really meaningful. And then secondarily, it was really taking on this notion that each moment was mine. And so even when I was flat out, then I had to be down. That's when I did a lot of the mindfulness practice, was like, if each moment is mine, I want to be here for it. And I want to learn to be more focused, to be more patient, to be more kind, to be more alive. So yeah, let's do it, man.
Yeah, for sure.
Fantastic. Are you happy enough to talk to us then about Civilization is Yours? Because I know that's a big domain for you. Yeah. And we spoke a little bit about it last week as well.
Yeah, Civilization is Yours. That's the third domain of freedom. And as I said, we believe that. I mean, we don't see it right now around us, but that's kind of how we were brought up, right? We were brought up that democracy is meant to be ours, and we're meant to craft a civilization that's really an astonishing thing. And we've seen many of the results of it. We've talked about it with Hans Zimmer and other things, and your clients, how they live. It's pretty amazing how we all live. How the three of us are able to connect, across who knows how,
there you go.
how far the distance is. It's beautiful. What an amazing thing. And yet we're really troubled. We see right now, one of the ways I frame it in economic terms. In economics, they talk about things called negative externalities. And negative externalities are unintended consequences. And what we're seeing now is the negative externalities of this huge 250 years, we've seen this amazing growth. We're seeing now that as we've come and become whole, like we're one earth, we're one people, we're one species all around the world. And at the same time, as we keep going to scale with our large businesses, what happens is that the negative externalities of those businesses are going to scale at the same time. And they're going to scale faster than we, as humanity, can cope. And so that's giving us kind of a great deal of like, yikes, what's going on? The risk factor and uncertainty and worry. And I don't think it has to be that way. So when I noticed this, and I noticed this before the long COVID, I went on a world tour. And my world tour was my assumption that if we did the same thing with civilization that we do in life planning with individuals, and we go around and we ask people what their dream of a golden civilization would be. And that was another book. I'll show you the book that I wrote just before the 3 Domains of Freedom.
Brilliant.
It's called The Golden Civilization and the Map of Mindfulness. And I asked people all over the world, rich country, poor country, democratic country, autocratic country, what would it look like, a golden civilization? At first they go, we'll never have it. And I said, no, imagine that we're there. 200 years from now, 500 years from now, we're there. What does it look like? And everybody said the same thing. They said we'd have democracy. I mean, that was even in dictatorships. We'd have democracy. We'd have incredible vitality. We'd have kindness. We'd have an end to corruption. We'd have an end to false news, propaganda, untruths. We would be able to trust our institutions everywhere for everything. There would be adequate food, shelter, and healthcare, back to health again, for everyone. So they all wanted it, everywhere in the world. And I thought, well, if everybody wants it, why aren't we delivering it? and seeing all the negative externalities coming. I know the three of us we love the entrepreneurial nature of what capitalism has given us. And one of the theories of that entrepreneurial endeavor, that competitiveness, and it's kind of a Darwinian theory, is that as we compete with businesses, we will deliver more and more of the very best of what humanity is capable of delivering into the world. So that I put on my economics hat. I think I told you I minored in economics at Harvard, and I put on the economics hat, and I thought, 250 years of this incredible growth. How come we haven't delivered the very best of humanity to the top of every hierarchy of power? Why don't we see at the top of every business, nonprofit, and government wisdom and compassion? Why wouldn't they be there? If the system was really working, if it was the best system and it was really working to deliver that. And so it made me think, gosh, that means that all these things that are off, the climate crisis, the crisis in democracy, the crisis in news, all these things that are off must be systemic. We keep trying to solve them one at a time. No, they've got to be basically systemically occurring, or we would see wisdom and compassion at the top of every hierarchy of power. So I went back to a notion that I don't know if you've talked about it, but it's a notion that's huge in the States, and I know that you guys will be familiar with it, and that is a fiduciary notion that as a financial advisor, the best financial advisors put their clients ahead of their own self-concern, ahead of their own concern about their business or money. The clients come first, no question about it. That's fiduciary. So in a civilization we think of as democratic, wouldn't the people come first? We'd be delivering something great to civilization. But if you look at the in business law, we are required to be fiduciary to shareholders above anything else. So if you look at what's happening just with inequality in America, and you look at that 3 billionaires right now own as much as 180 million people. I can't fit 180 million fingers in this room, right? 3 billionaires. So the question is, what fiduciary standard is really operative in society right now? And it's pretty clear that it's a shareholder standard. So my notion with civilization is we can shift that dramatically, and it'll change our business life. It'll make our business life actually much more entrepreneurial by simply making that fiduciary standard, extending that fiduciary standard to mean that all institutions have to place truth, democracy, the planet, and people ahead of their own self-concern. And I think everything would solve very, very quickly. And we'd find a whole new state of humanity and of civilization to be entrepreneurial in.
That's brilliant.
So that's a mouthful.
No, that's brilliant. And again, we often talk about, really our true purpose is to serve. It's funny as you talked about, the 3 billionaires in the world at the moment who equal 180 million people. I heard yesterday when I was listening to an audiobook how when Cornelius Vanderbilt died, he left $300 billion in today's money in his will, right? Yeah. Which was more than the US Treasury had. So he left more in his will than the US Treasury had. And in 60 years after he passed, all that wealth was gone.
Wow.
It was just, lost with generations, trying to impress other generations of what they could do with that wealth, how recklessly they could spend it, and so on, looking for attention. And again, really, what is it all about when you're at that level where 3 people are doing extremely well and 180 people,
And to your point, Gary and George, I mean, you've explained that better than anyone. I mean, if you think too of Chuck Feeney, who died, I think, in 2023. I mean, what a serial worldwide entrepreneur. Gave away $8 billion and died, passed away and, had a rented apartment, a $15 watch. I mean, has done so much for, as you say, at a very human level. Phenomenal. And what Warren Buffett, and again his partner, Charlie Munger, who is since deceased, but he was their hero. And, you're bringing it back to pounds, shilling and pence, and, whether it's Ireland or the UK or the US or anywhere in the world, I mean, there's people, struggling some to put diesel and petrol in cars, and you have inflation and rising prices and so forth. And I think what we're trying to do as best we can is just, bring it back to what's important now and being present. And, for any of us fortunate enough to have a roof over our head and food there at Christmas and kids and family and friends, I mean, we're more fortunate and blessed than 99% of the people in the world. I mean, I'm very long on progress, and, that the progress is very much permanent and the declines are temporary. But, sometimes we lose sight of the fact that we're blessed. We are very grateful for what it is we have. And you've just transcended. I mean, you brought that to a whole new level. And already looking forward to our Wellth Talks in Hawaii and later on in the summer.
Before we wrap up today's episode as well, I want to take time out to focus on the Mools, the startup initiative that you're doing in London, because, again, I put a lot of investment into our 2 studios here in Galway in the west of Ireland over the last number of years. And it's amazing. And it's not to blow our own trumpet. It's amazing when people come in here for the first time and see the setup and the wow factor, for them. You're like, they're just like, this is amazing. To think that this exists here in the west.
And there it is. I'm not here.
But I wouldn't say that I didn't realize, but I think the reality of what we have built and achieved here over the last few years has resonated much deeper with me in recent time, of how this has been created by a team, not by me as an individual, that I never visioned it to become as great and successful as it is. And it's all because of the amazing team that we're all working together. We're all on the same level. It's fantastic. Talk to me about productivity and Mools and the work you're doing at the moment now from London.
I mean, I've been really honored by being given this visa, this innovator founder visa in the first place. They when I put in the business plan, they told me, well, yeah, if you're lucky, we'll get back to you in 4 weeks. But I looked online; it was often 4 months. They got back to me in 9 days. The plan had to be innovative, number one. Number two, it had to be viable and scalable. So, I'm very proud of that initiation, that initial launch. And we are launching right now. And what the main thesis of it, part of it is this mission-driven purpose, this fiduciary notion coming into business. And part of it is then to make that alive within the workforce. The main question and the main thing we've seen, this is huge in the UK right now, but it's huge, I think, all over the EU. I'm sure this is relevant in Ireland and very much so in America, is productivity. We mainly are seeing productivity gains coming through technology. But we're also aware that the productivity isn't nearly where we think it should be. And often people talk about it really being stifled. There's a study that Lord Price, and I'm forgetting the great corporation that he was with originally, but Lord Price is now promoting something called happiness at work. And he's got these studies that show that happy workforce is 13% more productive than one that's just normal. And I saw that, and it's getting a lot of promotions on the front page of the London Times and all this stuff. And I thought, gosh, we could do much, much better than that. And so I went back and looked at recent studies, and there's a great study by Bain and Company. I'm sure you're aware of it, the major international consulting firm, from 2017. And their study says that an inspired workforce is 125% more productive than a workforce that's just satisfied. So it's not a negative workforce, but one that's just satisfied. 125% more productive. So I think that if you look at life planning and how life planning just drives someone into turbocharges all their energy, I think you can see that life planning makes, it'd probably be infinite, compared to 125, much larger than 125 increase in productivity. So all my life I've dedicated to both freedom and to inspiring people to move forward. So my thought was, I think we can create that inspired workforce. And maybe it's not 125%. Maybe we only get to 40 or 50%. But imagine if your workforce, if you're a business person, an entrepreneur out there, imagine if your workforce, every single person in your company overnight, suddenly, was 40% more productive. They were 40% more engaged, more efficient, more energetic. 40%. Imagine
That's
that.
phenomenal.
Yeah.
And you can just feel that suddenly you're realizing, and this is another piece that I'm working on here as a thought piece and understanding this, as we're moving into an understanding of humanity as being a global phenomenon as opposed to nation state and that kind of phenomenon, we need to create something that is alive in our organization, something that is sustainable the way a tree is sustainable. And a business hierarchy tends to deliver those 3 billionaires, compared to the 180 million people. Ultimately, the negative externality of capitalism is inequality, is hierarchical. And so how can we build something that is alive and therefore filled with listening, where our people are listening? So productivity in a business, what I'm doing is I'm saying, let's bust the barrier between CEOs and the workforce, where the workforce doesn't dare share who they really are with the CEO because they're afraid they'll get fired or they won't get a raise. Let's bring life planning in. And let's ask the CEOs, let's train them to be great listeners, so that rather than managing roles, they're managing the energy of their people, so that their people become, twice as energetic as what they are right now, because the CEO believes in them. They aren't just asking the employee to believe in the vision of the mission, but the CEO is believing in them. And then let's bring the mission-driven aspect of the company to each individual and get them exploded in excitement and inspired because they're adding their piece and they know who they want to be in a mission-driven way. And I'll just add one more thing. If you do take this notion that listening's 100 million times as fast as thinking, there's a huge productivity gap that is there as well. So I'm excited about turbocharging productivity in business by building listening and by creating a new world which is sustainable, as opposed to a world that is, kind of fractious, as we're finding right now.
That's an absolutely phenomenal. Listening is more than 100 million times. That statistic in itself is just phenomenal. It really, really is. And I mean, you talk about turbocharging productivity, even taking that into, I'm thinking selfishly for myself. I mean, just, when the purpose is clear, decisions then become effortless. That really, for me, I think is...
There's one thing I want to mention there, listening to you, George, where when you were speaking there, it reminded me of one company in particular. It's an Irish medtech company. There's a man who grew up in London called John Power, and he now lives in Galway. And he's actually a neighbour of Niall, and he'd be a friend of both of us. And he created this Irish medtech company called Aerogen, which has just gone phenomenally from, a company of maybe 80 people 5 years ago to just global. And they're doing phenomenal work. And I remember one day talking to him in his office in Galway and how inspired he was with the purpose, having clarity on what the purpose was for the business in terms of the aerosol technology that they've developed to help people in getting medicine. So they'll put a medicine sometimes needs to be, it could be a liquid or something. And what it does is it has this mesh that basically turns it into thousands and thousands of little molecules that works all the way deep into the lungs and helps the recovery. And the way he spoke, he was so inspired by the purpose of what he did. And 2 weeks later, I was down in one of their factory in Shannon.
Oh, Shannon, yeah.
And I met one of the guys working on the floor who's just involved in the design and engineering of the mesh and working on loads of these. Like, he would do a minute element to this piece of technology and be doing it hundreds of times throughout the week. And he spoke to me as inspired about the work he was doing as the CEO of the company, of Aerogen, spoke to me about. And I thought, wow. And I was only onto them a few days ago in an email. And I said, of all the companies we've worked with, and we work with great companies over the last 12 years, they have the best company culture there because everyone is so inspired.
Yeah, that's it. Boy, that's phenomenal. What a story.
Yeah.
And there's a correlation in terms of what it is, George, you do and what John does. I mean, John, spent a lot of time. He's a Chelsea supporter, loves his football, but the village we live in Moycullen, which is West Galway, it's just so ingrained in the community, and small things are big things, and built a global business from over a butcher shop here in Galway, and never lost his roots. I mean, he's very, very, where his feet are, and 5 wonderful children, brilliant business. And, you look last year there at the Galway Chamber of Commerce Awards, where the company was recognised for its, not just its innovation, inspiration, and, they've touched and saved hundreds of thousands of people all over the world. But your point is well made. You see him at a football match, you'd meet him on a Friday evening maybe for a pint, you'd meet him there in Aerogen. I go back to the late 90s and sitting in his office, and he'd just come to life. That was his passion. It was never about, it was never about the money. It was all about serving. And we talk about with Pádraig here on Wellth Talks around, we're all servants. We're ultimately here to serve. And that's an interesting analogy, because as George was talking about, there's so many similarities with what it is they do. That was just phenomenal. That was, I don't know, I'm kind of a little bit lost for words.
Yeah. Another masterclass by yourself, George Kinder, today. Thank you so much. And thank you for what you were doing as well for greater society. And we need leaders in the world, in government and institutions. We need them in business, but it all needs to be coming from the right place, and we could have a much nicer, kinder, more respectful world than for each of us to live in.
My dream is that all institutions be profoundly humane and trustworthy, so the consumers would say that for everything they do, and I think we can make that happen.
Yeah, I hope so.
We will make it happen.
Make it happen in Hawaii.
Let's go.
And George, we'd be deeply honoured and hugely privileged to welcome you to Galway, maybe at some point during this year, 2026. I mean, I said in our last episode, our first conversation with you, that dream becoming a reality. And my intention now is, alongside Gary and your own team, is maybe to help make something this year, 2026, bring you to the west coast of Ireland and enjoy a few days, introduce you to a couple of people. And, you have so much to offer. You've done so much for so many all over the world. And Muila Buchas. And thank you very much. And wishing you and your family and Kathy every success, health, wealth and happiness in relocating there to London. I hope your family are well, and looking forward to meeting you in person hopefully soon. Thanks a million, George.
Very soon. Thank you so much, Niall. Yep. And Gary, thank you.
And thank you, George. And just finally then, you've published 12 books. Is there one domain URL address where people kind of access everything?
Domain that shows all the things that I've done, called georgekinder.com. It's very easy. It's wildly creative. But in terms of the businesses, themools.net is very good, or fiduciaryandallthings.com. The civilization oriented work. Yeah.
Brilliant. Super. George, thanks a million. As I said, I'm delighted to meet you today, and it's all because of this man, Niall Layden of Atlantic Wealth Management, who spoke so highly of you and continues to over the last number of years. And he's done it for decades previous, but I mean, your words have resonated with him, which have then resonated with me. So thank you so much, and all the best for 2026.
Brilliant. Thanks a million,
Likewise.
George. Thanks, Gary.
You so much,
Thanks,
guys.
George.
This is a GK Media podcast.